Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for having me today. I hope you are all doing well. It's been a few months since we last saw each other. I just made one little update to the title. I put exercise, not just strength training for fall prevention. So that was the only update to the lesson. Also, I do want to preface that some of the slides I am going to breeze through because they are some of the same topics we actually talked about last presentation for bone health. So what I'll be doing, as I always do, I'll be sending out the slides to all of you, and then you're welcome to go through them. It's just for the sake of time and also because we did cover it last time. So if anybody was with me last presentation, you will see a few of the same slides. So today, last time we talked about bone health, and now we're going to talk about the importance of protein, what happens to our bodies as we age and go through the aging process, and how exercise and also nutrition, of course, can help protect you against muscle loss and reduce your risk of falls. Okay, so here are our lesson objectives for today. As I mentioned to you, we'll learn the effects of aging on our musculoskeletal system, learn why the risk of falls increases with age, learn which nutrients are most beneficial for slowing down muscle loss, and discuss the role of exercise for reducing fall risk, and learn what components of an exercise program are most beneficial for individuals 65 and older. So I want to preface something. The next few slides, a lot of times when we talk about aging and things like that, when it comes to health, it seems depressing. And even just making the slides today or for today's presentation, it was like, man, this sounds so kind of sad, right? But I really want to stress that losing muscle is a natural part of the aging process. It actually starts way earlier than everybody thinks, but I don't want anyone to feel kind of down or discouraged when I go through what happens to our bodies. It is part of, the natural progression of life. So I just wanted to stress that why this has its own slide in here. So everybody understands that it's just part of how we age. Okay. All right. So what happens as we age to our bodies, particularly with the musculoskeletal system? So there's a term that we use called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is the involuntary loss of muscle mass, strength, and function. As we lose muscle mass, basically our risk of falls can increase. Okay, we're more vulnerable to injury. But what I wanted to share with you is that the rate of muscle mass decline actually starts in our 30s. So it's happening way earlier, like I said, than we think. We lose about 3 to 8% of our muscle mass per decade when we, starting at the age of 30. And then the rate of decline does accelerate as we hit 60. And then as we get to 80, 90, it goes even faster. Okay. So it's starting way earlier, like I said, than we all think. Sarcopenia is a fundamental cause and contributor to disabilities among individuals who are older in age. Let's talk about what happens to our muscles specifically. Again, I spoke about bones last time. Now I'm kind of transitioning to muscles, tendons, ligaments now. So as we age, our muscles begin to shrink and lose mass. For those that are a little bit more sedentary, don't move as much, don't participate in regular physical activity, this can accelerate the process a little bit faster. And so that's why, again, you guys are all here learning about this to hopefully prevent that shrinkage from occurring faster. The number and size of muscle fibers does decrease. So that means it takes muscles longer to respond to activity. I'm going to talk about reflexes in a second. And then the water content of tendons. So tendons are cord-like tissues that attach muscle to bones. Decreases. So this makes the tissues stiffer and less able to tolerate stress. Another thing that occurs is hand grip strength. Okay, so that's how we grip things right here, does decrease. So that sometimes if even your parents or elderly family members having a hard time opening a jar or, turning the key, that is just, again, part of the natural aging process. Sometimes we see arthritis be a little bit more prevalent as well. That has to do more with bones, but again, see that as we age as well. The heart is a muscle. So the heart muscle becomes less able to propel larger quantities of blood quickly to the body. So that means we get tired more quickly and take longer to recover versus doing the same activity when we're a little bit younger. All right. From a metabolic standpoint, the body's metabolic rate does slow with age. Again, a natural part of the process, which means that we do burn a little bit less fuel. We have less lean body mass, and muscle mass is usually replaced by fat. So we have a little bit more fat mass and a little bit less muscle mass as we age. Again, I'm going to give you recommendations of how to prevent that, okay, from happening, but that's usually what happens as we age. The decrease in muscle mass plus a progressive increase in fat mass can definitely put people more at risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes throughout the lifespan. Our bone density decreases, as I mentioned in the last presentation. Joint stiffness increases, and there's a small reduction in stature. Typically, we start seeing kind of the vertebrae kind of get a little bit more squishy. And so you kind of see people rounding a little bit more. And so that also reduces the stature and kind of how people are standing. And there are changes to the foot as well, the bones in the feet. Okay, so that causes a little bit reduction in stature as well. All right, let's talk about increase in falls. So the National Institute of Health, also known as the NIH, for those that are familiar, reports that 1 in 3 people over the age of 65 will experience a fall each year. We sometimes associate falls with 80, 90-year-olds, but this is looking at 65. So that's pretty young, still in the lifespan. And, falls, depending on the age, depending on the person's bone density, depending on their nutrition and their strength training and exercise routines, can be deadly. They sometimes give people a year to live. If somebody is very old and frail and breaks a hip, it could be very dangerous. On top of that, when we fall, what does that mean? We're injured. So we can't really then do more physical activity, which then kind of counteracts everything that we're learning in this class. So that makes it even harder to counteract all the things that I just mentioned in the slides earlier. So we really want to make sure that we're doing what we can to prevent this from happening in the first place. Less muscle means greater weakness and less mobility, which does make it our body's a little bit slower to react, meaning slower reflexes. Okay, so there's a lot of evidence of that. That can definitely put us at risk of falling and fractures. Okay, I'm also going to mention a few other risk factors for falls as well in the next slide. This was really interesting. So balance, again, young. Okay, not again, we're thinking like 80, 90. No, definitely happens earlier. So balance actually starts to decline at the age of 50. I found this really interesting study they did. They said adults at ages, between 30 and 40 can stand on one foot for 1 minute or more. Okay, then at the age of 50, the time decreased to 45 seconds. By 70, it decreased to 28 seconds. And by the age of 80, it was less than 12 seconds. So when we get off the Zoom today, may be interesting to see where, how long you can balance for. I know when I'm working with older individuals, I'm not old, but older, I definitely incorporate balance work into the workouts because it's very important since I, again, want to make sure they don't fall later on and work those systems. But yeah, it may be interesting to do a little test on yourself to start a timer, kind of balance and see how long you get just to kind of know what your baseline is. All right, perfect. So it's not just, muscle weakness that causes falls. I want to address some other factors too that are very important. One has to do with the system in the inner ear. We know that our ears help control kind of the balance system in our body. So that system that connects the ear to the brain, that gives the message to the brain, like, hey, you're about to fall, starts to decline as well. So that makes it a little difficult for the body to, again, that slower reflex, right? For the body, the brain to get that message, hey, I'm about to fall down 3 stairs. Can I brace? That system's a little bit delayed. So as a result, maybe you fall all the way. So it is important, again, to recognize that system kind of declines as well. So we can't take that corrective action when a fall is about to occur. Also, sight changes with age affect depth perception and sensitivity to contrast of different floors, different surfaces, things like that. Blood pressure drops. If somebody is sitting for a while and then stands up too fast, that could cause a dip in blood pressure or change, causing lightheadedness, a bending over and then standing up. There are a couple different movements, of course. If somebody's on blood pressure medication, and they think they're getting it regulated, it could go too low because they're regulating it too much. That's happened before. Someone can faint. So it's just important to acknowledge that as well. And then medication. Some medications, if you read the side effects, it will say dizziness, lightheadedness, things like that. So that could also put you at risk for a fall, depending on which medication it is. All right. So I am all about prevention. I mean, you are all here today because you care about your bodies. You want to do something to help prevent future incidents from occurring later on, keep yourself as healthy as possible. So I want to give you, kind of the information, the major nutrients that are really important to help prevent muscle loss. If you remember from that slide, that very first slide, it is natural to lose some. So all of the information here is not going to fully prevent you from losing any at all, but just to help maybe slow down that rate a little bit. Okay. So here are the nutrients I'm going to cover today. Protein is definitely going to be the most important for prevention of muscle loss. And then I'm also going to discuss omega-3s, vitamin D, vitamin C, and calcium. Vitamin D and calcium were covered in the bone section as well. So you can see a lot of parallels, and so is protein actually. So a lot of these, by really focusing on these nutrients are also going to help support bone health, as you learned last presentation. All right, let's talk about protein. So again, last time I mentioned to you the effect of protein on bones. Let's talk about the effect of protein on muscles this time. So protein is an essential nutrient for muscle growth and repair. When we eat protein, the body breaks down the protein into something called amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. And then the amino acids go into the muscle fibers and get them stronger. Okay, that's basically one of the biggest roles of protein in our bodies. As we age, our body's ability to break down and synthesize protein decreases. So that is why there is a big argument that we need a little bit more as we age, since our bodies are having a little bit more difficulty, breaking that down, then we need to rely on eating it to making sure that we have enough to do the job that we need to do. Eating more protein has certainly shown beneficial results on maintaining lean body mass I would argue, across the entire lifespan, not just in older adults too. Okay. I went over this briefly last time as well. The recommended daily allowance for most adults 18 and over is 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight daily. How to calculate kilograms? You take your weight in pounds and you divide by 2.2, and then you multiply it by 0.8, and that's how many grams you would need in a day. So you're welcome to all do that now if you have a cell phone by you to kind of know your target. Sifting through the research though, there seems to be, and this kind of goes maybe not so much for all of you just yet, but I did see a lot of research that, when you hit 70, maybe more so 80 years old, that's really where it's showing that the 1.0 to 1.3 grams has been more beneficial based on the slide that I just presented earlier, the one right before. Generally, supplements are not needed. Most Americans certainly get enough in their diet. And then the only other thing to add on this slide compared to last time was the amount to have at each meal. So typically when I'm working with somebody, I recommend spacing protein throughout the day. So having a little bit of breakfast, a little bit of lunch, a little bit at dinner, and then even some at snacks in about 20 to 30 grams. That's the optimal level of absorption and synthesis for our body. Okay. It's not eating one giant meal of a big steak, 10 eggs, in one sitting. That's not really how it works or what our body prefers. But some of the research is showing that 35 to 40 grams per meal may be more beneficial for older adults because, again, we're not utilizing it as well, so we need more. There's still more research is needed, but if you want to go a little higher, I don't think it could hurt, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, of course, more research is definitely needed. If you are doing more strength training, I want to add that to this slide as well, then definitely go for the 35-40, especially then. Okay. All right, so we have both animal sources of protein as well as plant-based sources. Animal sources of protein have all 9 essential amino acids. I mentioned the amino acids are building blocks of protein and are considered to be complete proteins. That's all your dairy products, your eggs, and all your animal products. We also have plant-based protein, which I certainly recommend incorporating into your diet as well. And these certain ones right here, the soy, the quinoa, the amaranth, and buckwheat are complete proteins for plant-based, meaning they have all 9 essential amino acids. We also have several other plant-based sources. They're just missing 1 or more essential amino acids. So you do have to eat more variety of them to make sure you're covering your bases. So those would be things like lentils, beans, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. Okay. All right, perfect. Again, I'm not going to read line item by line item because I'll be sending you the slides. But here's a helpful chart to show you how many grams of protein are respective, in the respective serving size of that food. Okay, so this will be, again, sent to you in the slides, so you guys have this. All right, the main messages, so with protein is I prefer for all of you to choose the leanest sources of animal protein possible. If you see any visible fat on your red meat, trim it off before you cook it, before you eat it. If you want to cook with it, that's fine. Just, making sure it's not going into your body. Really avoiding those processed forms of protein. So the cold cuts, the hot dogs, the sausages, jerky, and some deli meats, not all, but some. I certainly am a huge fan of eating a variety of different sources. So some plant-based mixed with some animal. If within your day, okay, so not within the week, but within the day, can you look at your diet and say you've had both? If it's mostly animal in your day, think about where you can swap out. Do you want to go meatless for dinner and then have your, animal protein for lunch? Do you want to make all your snacks, plant-based protein, and then, all your meals, animal? That's fine. You certainly, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the seafood and the omega-3 section. When it comes to seafood, you want to aim for 9 ounces a week. This is a deck of cards right here. This represents about 3 ounces. Okay, a fish. So I have my little food model right here. So it's a little bit more than this food model here, but about this, you want to have about 3 of these a week. Any kind of fish counts. It doesn't have to be the salmon that I'm showing you, but just in general. And then if you're, worried about food budget, eggs, beans, lentils, well, maybe not eggs currently because they're a little bit expensive, but generally speaking, eggs, beans, lentils, and peas, split peas are more affordable sources of protein. Okay. Let's talk about omega-3s. This is a brand new section, okay, compared to last time. So what does the research say? Let's first talk about what are omega-3s. I know they've been in the news a lot in the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years. So a lot of people have heard of them now. There are 3 main omega-3s, ALA, DHA, and EPA. Those are the 3 main ones. ALA is an essential fatty acid. That means our bodies cannot make it, and we need to rely on food or supplements to get the ALA, okay? ALA then breaks down into DHA and EPA, okay? Some of it does, okay? What are some of the roles of omega-3s in the body? Well, it provides the starting point for making hormones that regulate blood clotting and contraction and relaxation of artery walls. They offer several other health benefits. The most well-known and why omega-3s are always in the news is heart health, protecting against heart disease, and certainly fighting inflammation. That could be cancer, that could be stress. So they're a huge, anti-inflammatory nutrient, which is great. Also really good for brain health as well. So memory, maybe early signs of dementia, things like that. But either way, it's a strong anti-inflammatory nutrient. How do omega-3s relate to muscle health? So certainly more research is needed. I'm going to present to you what is out there right now, but we certainly need a lot more, research on this topic. So one study did find that among healthy adults, and I think it's important to highlight that word because these are people that are fine, like they don't have obesity, don't have type 2. So the research could be different for those that do, that are 60 and older, those that did supplement with omega-3s for 6 months, but also did strength training, did have more muscle strength and muscle mass. It is really important, again, for me to highlight that this was in conjunction with a strength training program, okay? I personally don't think that supplements can hurt because of all the other benefits of omega-3s that I just mentioned earlier. However, it is important to see that this study was healthy individuals 60 and over and those that were participating in a strength training program. All right, what is the recommended daily allowance? So for adults 51 and older, 1.1 grams per day for women and 1.6 grams per day for men. You always want to try to get your omegas from food first, and I'll give you on this next slide what foods those are. And then if you really think that you'll need, supplement, that's fine. This is one of those things where I'm okay with people taking supplements for this one if they're not eating a lot of fish or whatnot, just because of the health benefits and because the sources are coming from food itself directly, fish oil, for example. Okay, let me see, we have a question. Okay, so how do dairy products complement your recommendations for protein sources? So if you saw, I'm not going to go back because I'm going to send you the chart. There are, so first of all, dairy products have vitamin D, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and calcium, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and protein. So incorporating those dairy sources, you want to choose the lower fat or non-fat varieties if possible, like Greek yogurt, for example, non-fat, low fat, and also cottage cheese, and also milk, and also light cheese. Those can easily fit in there. Dairy has a good combination of carbohydrates and protein, but that would count towards your total for the day. Yes. Does that answer your question? I mean, I would rely on, you want to eat a variety of foods from every single food group. So you don't want to just use your dairy foods as your protein. You still would want to make sure you get your plant-based and your other animal products in there, but it can certainly help you reach that goal if you need to. I hope that answers your question. Okay, perfect. All right. So there are, as I mentioned to you, omega-3s are abundant in fish sources. Okay, so I put on this slide here, again, I'm not going to read line item by line item, what type of fish, and then how many omega-3s. These are in milligrams, okay? So remember that I gave you guys your recommendations in grams. This is how many milligrams are in each, variety here. 3 ounces, just to remind you again, is that decacard size right here, okay? So I will be sending this to you so you can look through it and use it as needed. And then it is important to mention plant-based sources because not everybody eats fish. So your nuts and seeds, 1 gram is about a tablespoon. So this is a tablespoon, which is the size of your entire thumb. Okay, it has about, you can see 1.8 grams. So that's quite a bit in plant-based sources. For those that are interested in a supplement that is not fish oil, so my vegans, my vegetarians, getting your omegas from algae is probably going to be your best bet because every single omega-3 supplement on the market, it does come from fish. So those that are allergic to fish, vegans, vegetarians, get it from algae. Okay, that has been shown to be the vegan source of omega-3s. Okay, but yeah, you can see there's some in the beans, flaxseed oil, walnut oil, canola oil, tofu, edamame has some as well. Okay, so again, I'm going to be sending this to you so you can look through and look at the measurements and how much you're getting. All right, perfect. Oh, perfect. We got the question answered. Thank you. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure. All right, let's talk about vitamin D. Again, I talked about vitamin D, how it relates to bone health last time. Now we're going to transition into how vitamin D plays a role in muscle function. So vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin naturally produced in the body via sun exposure. Vitamin D is generally associated with bone health. However, it also plays a vital role in nerve and muscle function. Research shows that low blood levels are associated with less muscle strength and function. That means that leads to muscle loss and less production of cells needed to build muscle. So again, if you ever get your vitamin D checked, which is part of a regular CBC panel nowadays, they're going to be checking for that. That's something to be mindful of, and again, we don't want to speed up the process of the muscle loss. We want to make sure we kind of halt it a little bit. Some of this is repetitive from last time, but just as a refresher, because it can't hurt, there are two types, D2 and D3. Vitamin D is considered to be a nutrient of public health concern, meaning that most Americans do not meet the recommended daily allowance. Here are your reference intakes for individuals 1 to 70 years old. You need about 600 international units, that's IU. However, some studies and some organizations do recommend higher amounts. And those that are 70 and older, 800 international units. You don't want, I know a lot of people have been doing kind of the higher dose being prescribed, a very, very high dose once a week. You still want to be careful of not overdosing either. It is a fat soluble vitamin, and it's actually interesting because there's a lot of studies that show that too much vitamin D can actually be harmful for bones. So you always want to keep, and that's really, really high amounts. I'm not saying that it's very rare to see that, but you still want to be mindful. That is why it is always best to get your nutrients from food first, so you never have to worry about that instead of the supplements, okay? If you've been really focusing on all of the foods on this slide, okay, notice an interesting thing here. We have fish again. So that fish not only has your vitamin D, it has the omega-3s we just talked about. So that would kind of knock out those two things for a lot of you, for those that eat that. We also have fortified orange juice. Milk and dairy products are also on here. Okay, so that would help with protein as well. So you can see a lot of these same foods are going to help you in a lot of regards, okay, with a lot of different things. Again, food first, always, supplement second. If you are going to purchase a vitamin supplement, vitamin D, I would recommend D3. Okay, and then getting one with D3 and calcium. Vitamin D3 or D helps the absorption of calcium, so you might as well get both at the same time. If your calcium, you've had a DEXA scan, your bones are fine, you could just take the D3 by itself. That's completely fine. But we're going to talk about calcium in a minute, how it helps with muscle as well. So it may be beneficial to take both at the same time in one supplement. For those that are homebound, think if you have any neighbors or ex-coworkers or friends that, either they fell and they're injured, or they're in a wheelchair, or they have, a disease that prevents them from leaving the home, mobility issues, they may be really deficient in D because they're not getting outside enough, which is definitely puts them more at risk. So again, another reason why we want to prevent a fall, because we don't want to end up having mobility issues or being homebound because of an injury. And then the recommendation is 10 to 30 minutes daily in the sun. I know it seems like there hasn't been any sun lately here in San Diego with all the rain and everything, but we should be clearing up soon. The best time of day is 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You want your upper extremities to be kind of exposed. So if you're going to wear a big hat and then cover yourself up to here, that may not be as beneficial as like going without a hat, and just maybe even something like this, just to kind of expose your chest a little bit is good. I know it's cold right now, so it's a little bit hard, but when, summer comes and it's a little bit warmer, that should not be a problem. And then, like I mentioned last time, sunscreen is absolutely important. There are studies that show that wearing sunscreen only has a small impact on absorption. So I recommend the best thing to do is to go 10 to 30 minutes with maybe no sunscreen or very light layer. And then after that, absolutely apply it. Okay. Just in case. So I don't want anyone, getting skin cancer either. That's not good. All right, let's talk about calcium. So calcium is the main regulatory signaling molecule for muscle fibers. It triggers the contraction of muscle fibers, including the heart muscle. This is a really big cross-sectional study. 396,000 people found that a higher intake of calcium decrease the odds of sarcopenia. If you remember from that first slide, sarcopenia is the loss of muscle mass and function. Research is lacking in regards to how the exact, what the exact mechanism of how calcium, is, helping with muscle fibers or the sarcopenia. We just know it does, but we're not sure the exact mechanism and what helps. We know it does. That's what they found. And that's a pretty big sample size. I would never really present any research with a small sample size. So that's pretty big. So you can see a lot of parallels again by having D, by having calcium, you're going to help with bone health and muscle health. Okay, both. All right, perfect. Calcium is considered to be a nutrient of public health concern, especially with everybody switching away from dairy milks. Soy and almond milk do have very high calcium levels naturally. Okay. However, they do not have vitamin D. Oat milk, a lot of people are using that these days, does not have either. If you see it, it's been fortified, but oats themselves do not have calcium and do not have D. And that's where oat milk comes from. Same thing with rice milk, coconut milk. So I know there's been a really big kind of shift with people to stay away from those. And so that's definitely a concern for sure. The recommended daily allowance for individuals 19 to 50, it's 1,000 milligrams per day. For those who are 51 and older, it's 1,200 milligrams per day for females and 1,000 milligrams per day for males. If you remember last time, the reason it's higher for women is women, our rate of osteoporosis does increase starting with menopause. So that's why women need a little bit more. We talked about that last presentation, just a little bit. Here are your upper limits for calcium: 2,500 milligrams per day for adults, 19 to 50, and those who are 51 and older, 2,000 milligrams per day. All right. So we want to choose, just like we discussed, with the protein foods and vitamin D foods as well. We want to choose the sources that are going to have the least amount of saturated fats. That would be your non-fat, low-fat dairy products. And the ones that, have the least amount of added sugar. So a lot of, like chocolate milk, for example, or your yogurts that are already pre-sweetened with a lot of fruit in it. You'd want to be mindful of those as well. Okay, ice creams too. I know that's on here as well. So just got to be mindful, about those. This is also something from last presentation as well, we discussed the non-dairy sources of calcium as well. For those who are allergic to dairy or intolerant and avoid it, you can also get calcium in these foods as well. So you'll see chia seeds is on there. Again, omega-3s, that's another one that popped up in both places. And soy milk, tofu. So we'll see a lot of similarities between these foods. Okay. This was discussed a little bit more in depth last time, so I just kind of put a kind of refresher slide here. But we did talk about it more in depth last time. Absorption is best in smaller, more frequent amounts, just kind of like just how I discussed with the protein, right? So we want to split the calcium up into smaller amounts. So if you're taking supplements, this is very important to check your label and see how many milligrams are on that bottle. If it's 1,000 milligrams, maybe use a pill splitter and take half in the morning, half at night. Maybe it's buying that calcium and vitamin D and, seeing what the milligrams are. Maybe they sell it in smaller amounts, but taking 2 a day. But that is the optimal level of absorption. If you're going to be doing, for example, Greek yogurt, okay, that has a ton of protein, vitamin D, calcium, great food. That would be something you'd want to have like by itself, but maybe I wouldn't do that and a piece of fish in the same meal, just so you can kind of like, to divvy it up, in terms of absorption, and making sure, tofu, I shouldn't say fish, but let's say you're having tofu, right? You want to do like a big piece of tofu and your Greek yogurt. I would split those two up, so you're getting, maximum absorption of calcium in both of those meals. Phytates and oxalates, I mentioned last time as well. Those are chemical compounds that bind to calcium and block its absorption. I got a really good email after that presentation asking, if heat would help kind of destroy those compounds. And I wrote yes. So I'm putting it in the slide this time in case anyone has that question. Cook spinach, for example, or cook kale will help kind of get rid of some of those things. And then sodium caffeine and alcohol all inhibit the absorption of calcium, while vitamin D helps the absorption of calcium. I spent a lot more time on that last time, but it's just kind of a little refresher this time. I'm going to skip through the supplements for calcium because this is a repeat from last time, but I just wanted to have it in there when I send out the slides to you. All right, let's talk about vitamin C. This is a new one that we haven't discussed. How does vitamin C, play a role in muscle health? So sarcopenia can lead to extra oxidative stress. That term oxidative stress means that there are more free radicals circulating throughout the body, okay? Oxidative stress can trigger muscle breakdown and loss of muscle function. Oxidative stress it also has a lot of other detrimental effects. It can lead to increased chances of cancer, for example. It can lead to heart disease, diabetes, obesity. So, more research again is needed. Like always, there's always more research that can be done, but we already know that vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant. It goes in and cleans up the free radicals in the body and gets it out of the system. Okay. So we know that a lot with like immunity in general, that vitamin C, but there seems to be a direct correlation with vitamin C and measures of skeletal muscle mass in middle and older age men and women. Okay. There's a positive association. So that's a good thing. So we're seeing, vitamin C can help with other things, but in this case, they're seeing that relationship as well when they measured people's muscle mass. And that's men, women, both, which is great. So that's a good thing. Dietary vitamin C may be useful for reducing age-related muscle mass. So I'm presenting to you what I have with the current research. Of course, we know with things can always change, but that's what they're finding already, which is good. Vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin. So unlike vitamin D, that's a fat-soluble and does require fat to be absorbed, vitamin C does not. So basically any extra that we have, we literally just urinate it out, okay? And it just requires water, which is abundant in our bodies to be absorbed. Most Americans meet the recommended daily allowance. Deficiency is very rare. It's scurvy would be the condition you would get if you were deficient. And last time I checked, I don't know anyone that's had scurvy, or there was a scurvy crisis kind of rampant in the United States. So definitely there's no problems here. The recommendations for adults 19 and over, 75 milligrams per day for women and 90 for men. All right, let's talk about sources of vitamin C. I know we automatically always associate C with citrus, okay? Grapefruit, lemons, oranges, cuties, all of those things. But there are tons of vitamin C in other fruits and vegetables. So on this list, you'll see strawberries, tomatoes are really high in C. Also kiwis, green peppers, believe it or not, Brussels sprouts, spinach. So even our dark green leafy veggies also have vitamin C as well. So the best way to get it would be to eat a diet that is high in fruits and vegetables, which is good for you anyway. So that will kind of help in that department. Also cauliflower too. So that's on this list too. So this gives you how many milligrams per serving. So yeah, even if you need 75, you're a woman a day, 1 cup of broccoli raw, look at that, is already pretty much all you need in a day right there. Okay. So very easy to meet it, which is why, again, it's not a nutrient of concern. Perfect. I know a lot of people that take supplements, to meet their vitamin C. I'm not a big fan of any of them really, and I'll explain why. If you ever look at a lot of the labels for your supplements, first of all, supplements are not regulated by the FDA. Okay, unlike my opinion on omega-3s, which again, you're getting it from fish, so we know it's directly coming from the source. But with vitamin C, a lot of those products have dyes in them. They have added sugars, to make it a certain color, to make it taste sweet. So, and you really have a lot of binding agents, things that we really don't need that are just extra in there. So next time, when we're done with this presentation, you can kind of check out and see if the one that you have, if the ingredients are clean in it. Ascorbic acid is the preferred source of vitamin C. So it would say that on the label. So make sure, again, you check that. But guess what? Ascorbic acid is the one that's found naturally in food. So there really is no need to take supplements. Again, it's a water soluble vitamin. So loading up on 3 packets of Emergency a day is kind of really not going to do you anything, because you're just peeing it out anyway. Your body will use what it needs, and then that's it. So definitely take a look at your supplements and see if A, you even need it, and B, is it clean? Is it free of all these other, ingredients in there? Okay, perfect. Something I didn't put on the slide, this is just a bonus for you. I did this on purpose. I want to talk about collagen. This is kind of an added bonus. Collagen has been kind of a hot topic lately, and I wanted to address it and make sure that, I took the time to do so on a slide. And so I'm adding this as a bonus in there. Collagen peptides. All right. So that's things like, vital proteins. A lot of people have seen those products and things like that. So collagen, what exactly is it? It accounts for 30% of your body's protein. It provides structure and support for your skin, your muscles, bones, and connective tissue. So we need it. It's naturally occurring in the body. It's very important. As we age, the body's production of collagen does decline. So that's why skin becomes like a little bit, sagging a little bit more, things like that. So I was looking through the research on it. It seems that collagen by itself, and peptides are basically is collagen that's been broken down into the smallest form so we can absorb it the best. That's what peptides means. It's a fancy word of saying it's basically the amino acid equivalent of protein, right? It's been broken down already for us so we can absorb it. So the research does show that by itself, it didn't seem to do much for muscles. Okay. There is a lot of research. I'm only talking about muscles. If you want to talk about joints, there is a lot of positive research about it, how it helps like with joint health and arthritis and things like that. I'm just only talking about muscles right now. But there was one study that found that the 60 minutes of resistance exercise, that's quite a bit, by the way, a full hour, 3 times a week, combined with collagen supplements, did produce a more pronounced improvement of body composition. So basically increase in muscle mass and an increase in muscle strength. So I just wanted to let you know, again, my opinion on it. I think you would still, it's kind of like the other side that we talked about with the omegas, right? It's like doing it with the resistance exercise is going to give you the best result, but maybe by itself, it won't do anything. Okay, so just something to think about. I just wanted to throw it in there in case people had questions about it. Looks like we have a question. Vitamin K2. So great question. Vitamin K2 has to do with bone health. So I think that would have been more relevant for the last presentation. There is no need to take supplements, by the way, guys. You really, really, really want to focus on food first. Vitamin K you can find in all your dark green leafy veggies. Okay, so just taking that, you're fine. You don't need to take supplements. Yeah, so no, I would say, is there a benefit? No. The answer to that question. All right, cool. Sorry, I'm just going to close this here. Perfect. Alrighty, so yeah, just my opinion on collagen. If you want to take it in conjunction with working out or for your skin or like other reasons, sure, I don't think it could hurt. It's pretty low calorie. I'm sure it's fine. I have heard some of my clients complaining of some GI issues like diarrhea, constipation with it, some bloating, things like that. I mean, if you are fine and you take it, you don't have any issues like that, I don't think it could hurt. But would I go out of my way to say you absolutely need this? No. Okay. Perfect. All right. Let's talk about exercise. So we talked about the nutrients to focus on. This time, I really want to spend some time talking about exercise and how we can reduce our risk of falls. So we know that we've been hearing it since we were kids in PE, right? From little kids. Regular exercise improves muscles and helps keep your joints, tendons, and ligaments flexible. Exercising regularly can also, there's like so many other benefits, right, than just the muscle and preventing falls, but it can improve your brain health. Certainly we feel much better after we get a nice walk in or we work out. We just feel, those endorphins are going. So we feel better mood. We can certainly reduce our stress. As I was mentioning earlier, stress is a huge pro-inflammatory response in the body. And we want to try to keep that as low as possible, because it won't only lead to mental health issues when you're really stressed, but the physical ramifications, which are, cancer, as I was mentioning earlier, and increased arthritis. I mean, just any medical condition you can think of, stress can exacerbate that. So we really want to try to keep that down by eating healthy and then also working out. It can certainly help you manage your weight, reduce your risk of chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers. It also helps improve your ability to do everyday activities, reaching for things. Every time we're reaching for something, right? That's our shoulder doing a push-pull movement. Okay, this way, or picking up groceries, push-pull movement, opening up those those jars we were mentioning earlier. Just everyday things like doing laundry, dishes, that requires all kinds of movement. So it will make those easier, and then increases your chances of living a longer life. So all good things, of course, right? All good benefits. All right. Benefits of regular activity as we age. Exercise helps maintain muscle strength, coordination, and balance, which certainly all of these three together can help us prevent falls and fractures. This is particularly important for older adults and people with osteoporosis, which we spent time on last session. Resistance training. So resistance training, what that means, that could mean, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a second, but it could be machines, it could be body weight exercises, it can be mini bands, it can be resistance bands, like those longer ones with the handles. It could be dumbbells, kettlebells. So that's kind of how we define resistance training. Some kind of strength training helps increase and or maintain muscle mass and strength. Here is a pro tip for you. And all of you know your routines if you have one, if you've kind of been doing the same amount of reps, the same weight, the same set number of sets for a while, you definitely want to start thinking about increasing that, because if you kind of do the same weight for a long period of time, or the same amount of reps and the same exercises for months and months and months, you're really not going to see a change in the muscle fibers. You're not going to see a change in the ratio of lean body mass to fat mass. You're kind of just going to stay the same. So just a pro tip, just think about it. If you've been doing something at 3-pound dumbbells, maybe think about going to 5. And you can always start with less reps, higher weight if you want to, when you're transitioning to a higher weight. But really something needs to change, because that's kind of how we build more muscle, is really just changing one of those things. Also muscular endurance. I'm not talking about cardiovascular endurance, which is our breathing. I'm talking about muscular endurance. So that means you're able to go longer, okay, with your bicep curls or heavier. That's what I mean by endurance. Again, you want to think about going heavier in some way, maybe adding an extra rep, maybe balancing for a few more seconds longer, whatever it is, you've got to change something, because that, again, is the most helpful for, increasing muscle mass and preventing falls. All right. So what are the components? If you came to me and you said, what is the best exercise program for me? Okay. It encompasses 3 different pieces to it. Okay. And one alone, hey, is still better than nothing. So if you're just starting out with your exercise program, focus on one thing first. For example, just cardiovascular. But I will say that you need all 3, and everybody does. I would say for all ages, even not 65 and older. So here's the recommendations. The recommendations is 150 minutes of moderate physical aerobic activity a week. How do we define moderate? Moderate is defined by the talk test. Okay, so unless you have a Fitbit, Apple Watch, that will tell you what your moderate pace is, but I'm going to make it even easier for those that don't have any wearables. If all of us were going to go on a walk together, okay, hiking around San Diego or something, and we were all able to have a conversation next to one another without breathing heavily and just, how was your day? Great. We're not in moderate pace. That would be kind of an easy, I would say, call it pace. If I said, okay, everyone, we're going to start singing The Hills Are Alive in The Sound of Music. If we all try to sing and we are not able to hold that note and just sing, we're in the moderate pace. Okay, so it should be challenging, but not unbearable where you're like, and you cannot breathe. Okay, so it's kind of somewhere in between there. All right, that would be moderate. Either way, it has to be something to get your heart rate up. If you've been walking the same route again the whole time by your house and it's pretty flat road, I would say it's time to bump it up a notch. Maybe it's doing stairs for less time, okay, because that's going to get your heart rate up more. Maybe it's going on more of inclines. Maybe it's going faster, like instead of kind of walking leisure, you're going in a power walking. Maybe it's a slight jog, but you have to do something to get your heart rate up. If you don't, it's really not going to help you in the long run. Okay, so it has, but not enough to get gassed out either. It's kind of in between. All right. Or you can do 75 minutes a week of rigorous activity. Okay. Rigorous would definitely be more intense, but less time. So that would be something again, like a run walk, like something like biking on the Peloton. Something I'm trying to think what else could be. Playing basketball continuously. That would probably be more rigorous because you're staying in that elevated state for a while. The good news is you can do a combination of the moderate and vigorous throughout the week as well. So you can, it's 150 minutes of moderate or vigorous, or it's a combination of like, you could do less moderate, less vigorous, something like that. You can do a combo of the two. Okay. But either way, that's your aerobic activity. The second component to your exercise programming are muscle strengthening activities. They recommend doing it for 2 or more days a week. And you want to work all the major muscle groups. So not just, I know people that, especially these young kids in the gym, right? They're doing these split days of just, especially the guys, like just doing upper body, no lower body. And then I know women just doing lower body, no upper. You need to work out every single muscle group, because every single muscle group is important. Your core musculature connects the upper body with the lower body. Your core helps protect against back injuries. So you don't want to forget about that at all. Okay, I would say that's the most important. Everyone focuses on upper and lower. Your lower body, your legs are going to be your biggest muscle group. Okay, so your legs are going to carry the most energy. And you want to make sure those are nice and strong to help support your upper body when you're walking, running, doing any daily activities. Shoulders, as I mentioned, were really important. We forget the shoulder is such a small muscle group right here compared to something like our legs, but we forget, I work shoulders out all the time with my clients, love them, because we forget that we need it for, again, our daily activities, reaching for something on the shelf when you're cooking, okay? Going grocery shopping and reaching for something on the shelf. That's all shoulders, and shoulders are the second most common injury as well. So don't forget to work out the smaller groups as well. And then of course, the third component, 3 times a week, are going to be your balance activities. So that maybe that's, again, holding balance for a couple of seconds on each side, holding onto the back of a chair, doing some, balance holds. But there's definitely a lot of resources out there. Either you can work with a personal trainer, do a group fitness class, yoga. There's a ton of videos online to incorporate those balance activities. So we have your, cardio here, we have your strength training, and then we have the balance, flexibility, mobility, balance also in there. So it's a 3-part program. All right. As I was mentioning earlier, your resistance exercises are going to incorporate any of these. If you feel more comfortable on machines and you're just starting out, that's a great place. Honestly, body weight activities are just as hard, I think harder than machines. They are, because they're just using you against gravity. So if you want to start with machines and you're a brand new beginner to exercise, I would start there. And then as you get more comfortable, try body weight. If you don't want to spend money on a gym or access to a facility, again, doing stuff at home, we learned that in the last 3 years is just as beneficial. You can purchase some exercise bands, which I had on this slide right here in the corner, in the top right corner right here. Using dumbbells, using kettlebells, anything you want to use that you're comfortable with. The TRX strap is really great for those that have access to a gym with one. That's really good for balance exercises too, because it gives you something to hold on to, but you can do full body on that, which is great. exercise balls. So a lot of different pieces of equipment for you to choose from depending on what you're comfortable with. Balance exercises would include yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi. So, if you're really good with doing your own body weight at home and cardio, but you're kind of struggling in that department and you want to spend, your time focusing on taking yoga classes, that's great. Okay. Yoga and Pilates are also, I would argue, strength training too. They're both. Disclaimer, of course, always check with your doctor first before starting any exercise program, just to make sure you're good. You don't have any limitations to any movements. Your heart is good. It's always safe to do so before you start anything. Okay, great. Wow, we finished perfectly on time. Awesome. Does anyone have any additional questions? Thank you guys so much for your wonderful questions. Okay, I'm putting my contact info here. Wonderful. So here's my email. You're always so good about emailing, your questions after the presentation if you don't feel comfortable asking anything in the class. We still have 3 minutes, so I'm happy to stay on if you do. I hope this presentation was helpful for you. Again, you'll notice a lot of the same nutrients, throughout these presentations. So I think the main kind of message here is really focusing on eating foods from every single food group. Okay, so fruits, vegetables, whole grains, protein, getting a mixture of plant-based and animal, and your dairy foods, and you will cover almost all of this, right? You'd cover omegas, you'd cover D, you'd cover calcium, cover protein by doing so, getting fiber in, your vitamin C. So I really think that's the main message. Really leave your supplements, save your money, and leave your supplements for the specific groups that maybe you're low on or eliminating for a certain personal reason. Okay.
Thank you so much, Melody. This was a fantastic presentation. And yes, at the end of the chat, others also agree. Thank you so much. And we look forward to your next one.
Thank you so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.